And then you get off the boat and you're like this. There's people out there. Okay, we can do this. Woo, can I do this? We can do this. Good morning, everyone. It feels so nice to hear you say good morning back, and good morning to those of you joining us online. I'm Reverend Deborah Bennett, and this is Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. And a hearty welcome to all of you. If this is your first time visiting us, whether here in person or online, a special welcome to you. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and one of our core principles is really honoring the inherent worth and dignity in each and every one of you. And so I want you to know that you are welcome here. You are welcome here in all of your identities. You're welcome here wherever you are from, whomever you love. Thank you for being here, and a hearty welcome to you. Today we begin our month of exploring cultivating relationships. So what a wonderful service you've arrived to, and a wonderful way to kick off our in-person services once again. And welcome to those of you coming in now. Come on in, come on. So I want to begin with a little piece this morning from a woman named Gretchen Haley for our opening words. She says this: "For this one moment, know only that you are not alone, that you are safe and whole and loved. Know that you belong here among us, here upon this earth and here in this body. However tired or broken your heart may be, whatever fear, disappointment, anger you may carry, for this hour, know you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, literally, being present beside you and with you. Discover together the way our voices will rise and fall together in harmony or not, and in hope. Know that you are not alone." Do you know that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to invite you now to rise in body or spirit. Keeping masks on, feel free to sing. Our hymn ensemble has their very, very sporty masks on. Don't you like those? They can keep little snacks in there for when they get hungry. So please join us in our opening hymn, "Come Sing a Song with Me."
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope, and hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love, and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope, when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love, and a rose in the winter time.
Let me try that again. Good morning.
Good morning, Ed.
My name is Ed Cosper, and I'm a member of the worship team. And I do a few other little things around here sometimes. All right, Reverend Deborah. Each Sunday, we light our chalice. Its light is the symbol of our faith and a reminder of our commitment to be a beacon of love and hope to all who enter, whether that be in person or for those of you online. Today's chalice lighting words come from A. Powell Davies. What are we, any of us, but strangers and sojourners, forlornly wandering through the nighttime until we draw together and find ourselves and the meaning of our lives in one another, dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together, and lighting torches to guide us through the dark. May the light we kindle in our time together guide us once again until we are strangers no more. Now, in the spirit of the beloved community, let us take a moment to greet and welcome each other to worship. That's whether you're in person here or also for the folks online, you can do it through the chat room. If this is your first time with us, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat room. All right, and now let us remember and repeat our congregational affirmation: we need not think alike to love alike.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. I am Noel Garwick, and I'd like to introduce the newest member of our storytelling troupe, Miss Patricia Johnson. See, that's good. I never get applause. It doesn't count when I ask for it. That reminds me, my anniversary is coming up next week. Can't forget that. Anyway, so Patricia, if you'd like to introduce the story, and you guys are in for a treat, we're going to double team it. All right?
So this story is called The Messiah is Among You. This is recrafted with permission of the author, Francis Dorff, of the Norbertine community of Albuquerque, New Mexico, from his story, The Rabbi's Gift, which is copyrighted by the New Catholic World magazine. Mr. Cohen was the teacher of the most quarrelsome third grade class you could ever imagine. The kids in that class argued about everything. They argued about who should stand in front of the lunch line. They argued about what games to play during recess. They argued about who was the best reader in the class. And if Mr. Cohen asked them whether it was sunny or rainy outside, they even argued about that.
Mr. Cohen is at his wit's end. There was so much arguing going on that no one was learning anything. When they tried to do multiplication, Janie and Stan argued about whether 2 plus 2 was the same as 2 times 2. During history lessons, Carmen and Ling would quibble about whether Sherman had burned Atlanta to the ground or it had been the cowardly Confederate troops during their retreat. And Carlos and Beth each tried to grab a tambourine during music class, and Carlos ended up in the nurse's office when the tambourine hit him on the head.
Mr. Cohen tried everything. He promised the class an ice cream party if they could just get through one day without argument. No sooner had he made this offer than Charles and Bobby began to argue about whether they should get chocolate chip ice cream or cookie dough.
Is our parents relating to this at all? No? Mr. Cohen threatened the kids. He told them he'd send anyone who was arguing to the principal's office. That didn't work either. The principal, Mrs. Sanchez, pulled Mr. Cohen aside at lunchtime and said that 15 students that morning in her office was quite enough, thank you, and that she hoped to be able to get some work done that afternoon.
Mr. Cohen called parents. He tried very politely, asking the kids to stop. He kept the class in at recess. Nothing worked. There was only one thing left to do. Mr. Cohen went to his synagogue on the Sabbath and prayed. His rabbi noticed his look of despair and went to sit by him. The rabbi listened to Mr. Cohen's tale of the most difficult, argumentative third grade class in history. When she had heard it all, she simply said, "Stay home from work on Monday and leave it to me."
So that Monday, the kids walked into their classroom and found a rabbi, sitting at Mr. Cohen's desk. Of course, they immediately began to argue over whether Mr. Cohen was sick, or if Mrs. Sanchez had gotten so sick of a constant stream of rowdy kids being sent to her office that she had just fired him.
The rabbi sat and listened. She didn't yell or try to interrupt them. She didn't plead or scold. She simply sat quietly at Mr. Cohen's desk. After a while, the kids began to wonder what was going on. The arguments gradually died down as the kids watched the rabbi to see what would happen next.
And when the classroom was finally quiet, the rabbi slowly stood up. "Mr. Cohen will not be here today. I'm your substitute teacher, and I have only one thing to teach you. Listen carefully, for I will not repeat it."
The kids were too surprised to argue. The rabbi's voice rang out in the stunned silence. "Last night in my dreams, God told me a Messiah is among you."
That's right. So, and kids watching at home, not in front of us this time, do you know what a Messiah is? That's right. It's a special person that helps guide us, right? They try to express the best of people. Kids are so smart. So what do you suppose happened next? They argued. Oh my gosh, you are very smart, children. They argued, of course, and pandemonium broke out in the classroom as the kids argued about who might be the Messiah.
It couldn't be Charles. He was always getting into mischief. But on the other hand, Charles could always be counted on to be a helper. And Ling was clearly too bossy to be a Messiah. But then again, Ling went to church every single Sunday and prayed every night before bed. What about Janie? She always did her work so carefully and neatly.
So the arguing didn't stop overnight. When Mr. Cohen returned to school that next morning, the first thing he heard was Stan's angry voice. "I'm telling you, Carmen, Bobby's the Messiah. Just the other day I saw him comforting a little first grader who'd scraped her knee. Isn't that the sort of thing a Messiah would do?"
Soon, however, the arguments began to disappear. When Janie began to argue with Charles that she should be the line leader, she suddenly offered to stand behind him in line. After all, Charles might be the Messiah.
And in music class, Carlos and Beth took turns using the tambourine. After all, one of them might be the Messiah.
All that year, the kids kept trying to figure out who might be the Messiah. They began to think about each other differently. They noticed all of the good things about each other. Stan was a great artist with a huge imagination. Ling was passionate and strong. Carmen was the most loyal friend you could ask for. As for Mr. Cohen, he was a gentle, kind teacher. Maybe he was the Messiah.
And the kids also started to think about themselves differently. Each of them wondered, could I be the Messiah? And the children were inspired to try to be the best people they could be.
Soon the kids in Mr. Cohen's class had a reputation for treating one another well. Teachers came from far and wide to visit the class and asked Mr. Cohen for teaching tips. The year ended and the kids in Mr. Cohen's class graduated, having learned a very important lesson they would never forget. Everyone around you is special, and anyone could be a Messiah.
That next fall, Mr. Cohen looked at his brand new class of third graders. Already, John and Anna were arguing over whether or not alligators were the same as crocodiles. They're not. Good morning, children, he began. Has anyone here ever heard of a Messiah? He lowered his voice to a whisper, so everyone had to be quiet and listen, and he said, I've been told there's a Messiah in this class. Bum, bum, bum. Right, so let that be a lesson to grown-ups and little people. It's a choice every day how we choose to see the best in each other and in ourselves, right? Just not. Okay. So please join us for the song of dedication.
I invite you to rise. Actually, not going to pass the truth is a sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other. I think we're supposed to hit that low note. Other. Right, Scals?
Here at Emerson, our vision is to be a radically inclusive, open-minded, beloved community that is a vibrant source of peace, hope, and healing in the world. We know we cannot live this vision alone, and so each month we partner with another organization and encourage our members and friends to support the work they do, both financially and with action. This month, we are partnering with Lost and Found Youth of Atlanta. Lost and Found Youth envisions a world where all youth feel safe and supported to live and love authentically. Their mission is to end homelessness for all LGBTQ youth by providing them with the skills and support needed to live independently. Lost and Found was started by a group of activists after being turned away when attempting to place queer youth into local shelters and youth aid programs. They resolved that something needed to be done to address the immediate need, and in 2011, Lost and Found Youth was born. They offer LGBTQ plus youth 24/7 phone and text, email support. They also provide emergency transitional housing, emergency clothing and food for the youth on the street, mental health evaluations and counseling, referrals to health and educational services, and resume writing and editing and interview skills and training. But most importantly, a safe youth center. In addition to making financial contributions, consider stopping by their thrift store to shop or make a contribution or to volunteer directly with them. They would appreciate it. All donations that we give, unless otherwise specified, are shared equally with Emerson and our partner organization. And ways to give are shown in your notebook, the Emerson website, and for those online, it's posted in our chat room.
Yeah, we've decided not to pass the basket right now because of obvious reasons. So the baskets are at the back of the room. So if you'd like to make a contribution that way, they're also available to you at the end of service. So thank you. And also check out the beautiful poster that our intern Sarah Drew made about Lost and Found Youth. So keep an eye out for that. There's always going to be information about our partner organizations. And we're really going to work hard this year to connect with them even more than we have in the past and encourage mutual activities together as COVID allows us to do so. So thank you, Ed. Well, this is our time in our service where we pause to acknowledge joys, sorrows, and concerns of our Emerson community. And Claude, could I ask a favor of you? Again, I've got my sea legs on. Could you go to the back of the room and grab the yellow book in case anyone has written in there? So each Sunday we light our vigil bowl. Its light is a representation of light, of hope for a peaceful resolution of conflicts on our planet, and it honors all those dedicated people who serve, including on the front lines of the COVID-19 virus battle. Boy, it'll be nice when we have to stop saying that, won't it? We also light a special candle for acknowledgement for the land that we stand on. This is Cherokee and Muskogee, nations of people who first occupied this land. And may this candle remind us all of our interconnectedness, and that may our actions help heal the nations of all people on this planet. If you are online this morning, feel free to begin to share your joys, sorrows, and concerns in the chat. And I have a few to share here this morning. And for those of you that are newer, we do have a book at the back of the sanctuary every Sunday, so you can just list your own joys, sorrows, or concerns. So I have a joy from Maggie Baker. She says, so thankful for Claude Fravian, who saved our stranded office administrator, her. He dropped what he was doing and came to the rescue with jumper cables. Thank you, Claude. And another joy, we received word that Ed and Kathy Cosper's grandson, Logan, his surgery went well. Now this says hopefully he'll be released tomorrow, but is he released, Ed?
He's released.
He's released. He is back home. So thank you for keeping Logan in your thoughts and prayers. Kathy says while Logan was recovering, his mom tried to cheer him up with being a little funny, and Logan's response was, look, Mom, I'm not in the mood for jokes. We think that's a good sign. He's doing okay. And another joy, our dear Beth Klein's daughter, Kathy Klein, is now officially married. Yay, that happened yesterday. My understanding is Beth was the officiant. And a sorrow. Please keep Wynette Stone's family in your thoughts as Emerson receives news of her recent passing on September 13th in Athens, Georgia, after a brief illness. Thank you. And we know that there are probably many joys, sorrows, and concerns that are too tender to share, or maybe you just did not get a chance to write them down for us. So I'm going to invite you to please speak out loud the name of anybody you are holding in your heart today as Ed lights candles for them. Ronnie, Rob? Let us send our heart-filled, caring intentions to all people everywhere by sharing the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. Please repeat the words after me. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May they be free from harm and suffering. May they be well in body, heart, and mind. And may they be at peace. Blessed be. Thank you, Ed. I'm going to invite us now into a time of meditation and actually continue that Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. So if you're at home, if you want to find a comfortable spot, and for those of you here, sit in a way that feels that you can connect in with yourself, whether that's sitting up or leaning back, and perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. As we share this prayer every week, the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness, we send it out to all of those whose names had been named, all the prayers that had been spoken. We also pause each Sunday to acknowledge our interconnectedness with all of the world, those people that we have never met, or perhaps only met in passing. So in this morning's meditation, I'm going to invite you to take a moment and bring to mind someone whom you casually see in your world. Maybe it's somebody who's always there at the grocery store you go to, or someone that you see in a class or at the gym, maybe on a walk in the morning, someone's home that you pass by and you wonder, who lives there? You never see them out. I wonder if they're okay. So pick somebody, pick a situation, somebody that you can visualize for a moment. And take a few deep breaths into your own heart. Visualize yourself standing in the same space as this other person or persons. Just the two of you. And imagine yourself, or you can do it with your body, bringing your hands up to your heart. And take a moment to offer yourself a prayer of loving kindness. Taking that moment to ground into your own heart first. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free from harm and suffering. May I be well in body, heart, and mind. May I be at peace. And in your mind's eye, imagine yourself holding your hands that had just touched your heart out in the direction of this other that you don't know. You may not even know their name. You just know that it's another human in the world. And take a moment and share with them this prayer. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free from harm and suffering. May you be well in body, heart, and mind. May you be at peace. And take a breath into your heart and let that be enough for now. This desire to reach out and connect, to find yourself and to find each other. As you're ready, feel free to open your eyes.
Come, you wounded, weakened and weary, you are welcome here. Come discouraged, come broken-hearted, you are welcome here. This is a refuge for us. This is a harbor of mercy. So come, you wounded, weakened and weary, you are welcome here. You are welcome here. Come, you wanderers, straight from the journey, you are welcome here. Come with every burden you carry, you are welcome here. This is a refuge for grace. This is a harbor of mercy. So come, you wanderers, spent from the journey. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Come into love's embrace. Receive amazing grace. Here in this place. Here in this place. Come, you hungry, come all you thirsty, you are welcome here. Come for healing, strength and forgiveness, you are welcome here. You are welcome here. You are welcome here.
So nice. I know it's not the full choir, but thank you. Thank you for singing. So here's a question for you. Fly. What do you do about the fact that there are so many people in the world? How do you live life with the reality that the world is not yours alone? Okay, now let's face it. We intellectually know that is true. We understand we're not alone. But don't we often live as the center of our own little ecospheres? Allowing a few others to come inside occasionally, provided they follow the rules. Right, Bruce? I know you got your rules. You got rules. So what about all those other people? I mean, look around. They are surrounding you. What do you do with them? Seriously, look around. What are you going to do about it? Well, a bunch of years ago, my mother came for a visit, and we did what we often do when we get together. We went shopping. Now, after visiting more than a few stores, I'm going to, yeah, we go. All right, thank you. That other mic wasn't doing. After visiting more than a few stores in Lenox, a small town near where I lived in western Massachusetts, we walked into our final small boutique. And I was feeling tired. I'd barely gotten in the door, and I quickly decided I didn't want anything there. I was going to leave. But then I noticed my mom. Now, my mother had walked right into the shop with a smile and immediately acknowledged the only person in the store, the lady behind the counter, saying, "Hello, how are you today?" And now she didn't leave it at that, but instead she started talking to this person, telling her where she was from and telling her that she was visiting her daughter and telling her where I lived and about my kids. And then she asked the lady about herself and about her life. Now, maybe this is par for the course down here in the South, but this was in New England, okay? Yeah, those of you from up north know what I'm saying. So I was mesmerized watching my mom in action. She seemed to truly care about this lady standing behind the counter all by herself in that shop. That lady that to me, quite honestly, could have been just another mannequin based on the attention I was giving her. But my mom and the lady behind the counter continued to chat intermittently as we browsed, and the lady seemed to really be enjoying the connection. When we left without buying anything, I noticed I didn't even feel guilty like I often do in those situations. There was something about that time spent that just felt like enough for all of us. It made me think of Anne, Anne Shirley, up there in Green Gables. Do you know this quote? "Kindred spirits are not so scarce as I used to think," Anne Shirley says. and it's splendid to find out there are so many of them in the world. I'm curious, how many people know that reference? Okay, everybody go home and rent Anne of Green Gables, okay. Looking back, I think this ability to make connections is something that my mom did her entire life. But it wasn't until that day that I realized the most powerful part of what Mom did. My mom's answer to that question of the day was simple. She approached those conversations with a firm belief in the mutual human desire to connect. She seemed very confident that the other person would want to have that conversation. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't always assume that. In fact, I think it's kind of easier and definitely safer to just assume others want to be left alone, right? That way I can go about my business and pretend it was them that didn't want to connect. Now, how many of you relate to this simple story? It's from a woman named Lisa Ernst, who recounted it in the Buddhist publication Lion's Roar. In it, she shares a story about a man who worked at the produce department of her neighborhood grocery store. He was there every morning that she shopped, but she admits essentially he was invisible to her. Until one day, she said she was touching some produce that was especially wet, and her hands were dripping wet. And out of nowhere, this man comes over and just hands her a paper towel for her to dry her hands. She hadn't noticed him, but he had been noticing her. And she recounts how this simple act of loving kindness penetrated her heart. She said she actually cried when she thought of how she had unconsciously made him invisible. And she shares how that encounter changed her loving kindness practice forever. She says, I now begin looking around the store when I go shopping, noticing people, noticing who's there, stocking the shelves, working the cash registers, sweeping the floor. And I began offering them wishes of loving kindness and well-being and striking up conversations. As an introvert, she says, I often kept my attention to myself in public places. Can anybody relate? But these simple acts of acknowledgement broke me out of my conditioned patterns and created warm interactions. So Lisa used a spiritual practice to bring awareness to her interactions with the crowd of humans that surround her. She discovered that kindred spirits are not so scarce as she used to think, that it's splendid to find out there are so many of them in the world. There's actually a supermarket chain I learned of recently in the Netherlands, and they began offering one of their checkout lines. They call them, it translates as chat checkouts. So these are checkout lanes where the checkout workers are actually encouraged to chat and have conversations while they're ringing up the groceries. They did it because they were aware of the loneliness factor of many in that country, people who lived alone. And although it was specifically created for the cashiers, the employees report loving to work in the chat checkout. Some of the stores have even started having chat corners for people to just sit and chat. You know, I imagine that the marketplaces of the past, before these big box stores, that's what they were supposed to be, right? That was their purpose, to give people the opportunity to see each other, to take time to connect, to share stories, to share kindnesses. Profit-driven retailers have forgotten that shopping isn't just about purchasing things. Noticing others and acknowledging the shared human need to connect are powerful answers to the fact that we are surrounded by other people. Now, maybe that's enough, but something inside me tells me that there's even more. That small talk does have its place and it's valuable, but I believe that as humans, we actually ache for something more deep. Recently, I came across a 1980 study that showed most people reported having only 4 to 5 other people in the world that they would describe as close enough to them that they would discuss important matters with. So only 4 or 5 people. Any guesses on what those numbers were in 2011 when they repeated the survey? Sadly, the numbers went down to an average of 2. And a full 50% of people in this survey said they only had one person, and 4% said they had no one that they felt comfortable enough speaking deeply with. Now, these numbers seem shocking to me, and yet has our culture prepared us for anything different? In the rural farm community of Pennsylvania where I grew up, I witnessed a lot of discussions about the weather as I was sitting on Grandma's porch swing. Maybe a little gossip here and there too, but not much else. I didn't think it was considered polite to talk about private things or deeper things. And gosh, what if we were to disagree? Then what? Most of us were raised in a similar culture that does not encourage deep connection. We were taught that we were to find one partner and that that person would be our true confidant. And we could have some casual friends, maybe 2 or 3 besties, but that the rest of humanity was to be placed into a category somewhere between other and scary stranger. No one ever mentioned what would happen when that one true confidant was gone. Or how with this construct that the world would be filled with so many others and so many strangers. So many that it would make us just want to hide often. And into that culture, let's set up a global pandemic and tell everybody to be socially distanced. And we are ripe, my friends, for an epidemic of systemic loneliness like we have never seen before. A loneliness, I fear, is so insidious that we barely notice it exists anymore. The kids in the story got so used to questioning each other's existence that despite having that class together, being in this small community together, they turned each other into scary strangers to be looked at with suspicion, to be argued with, to be seen as other, an enemy. And I wonder how often we do that to others in our lives. How often do we do that to others that might be living in our own homes? There's this wonderful story from Ram Dass that gives us an idea of how we can shift out of this. It's from his book, Polishing the Mirror. He says, I remember lecturing back in the early 70s. Does everybody know who Ram Dass is? Ram Dass was a spiritual teacher from back in the 70s, yeah. Hippie kind of guy, yogi kind of guy. So in this story, he says, I remember lecturing once back in the early 70s. And he said, most of my audience at the time was young and tended to wear white, as we did back then, and wore a lot of flowers. He said, I wore my mala beads and I had a long beard. And he said, there in the front row was this woman about 70 years old who had a hat on with the little fake cherries and the fake strawberries and things on it like that. And she was wearing black Oxfords, and she had a nice printed dress, and she was carrying a little black patent leather bag. He says, I looked at her and I couldn't figure out what she was doing in the audience. She looked so dissimilar to everybody else. Now, in this talk, I started to describe some of my spiritual experiences, some of which were pretty far out. I looked at her, and she was nodding in understanding. I couldn't believe that she could understand what I was talking about. I was describing experiences of using psychedelics, experiences that involved other planes of consciousness. And I looked over at her, and there she was, nodding away. Now, I began to think that maybe she had a problem with her neck. Maybe it had nothing whatsoever to do with what I was saying. So I kept watching, and I kept getting more and more fascinated, and I kept getting more and more outrageous in what I was saying. And she kept nodding. The end of the lecture, I was just kind of smiled at her so intensely that she just had to come up to see me. So she came up and she said, thank you. Thank you so much. That makes perfect sense. That's just the way I understand the universe to be. Ram Dass says, how do you know? I mean, what have you done in your life that has brought you all kinds of those experiences, right? So here's Ram Dass, Mr. Spirituality. This had all these wild experiences, asking her, well, how do you know? So she leans forward, and very conspiratorially, she says, I crochet. We make so many assumptions about each other, don't we? So many determinations that someone is other, not like us, not part of our tribe, they won't understand us. Recently, someone commented to me that they didn't feel like they had close friends here at Emerson. And their comment reflected something I had been wondering about as I was preparing this sermon. Namely, do people at Emerson, do you, feel connected to each other? Do you see each other as other? Do you view each other with suspicion? Do you notice each other? What would it take to allow your connections to go to the next deeper level, to begin to recognize that you are kindred spirits? Brene Brown, the research professor of the University of Houston, who spent more than 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy, she defines connection as this. She says, connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. She said connection is the energy between people when they can when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. So do you have those connections here? Do you offer the possibility of those connections here to each other? There's a lot of talk these days about whether congregations and churches and synagogues will survive the pandemic, whether we're going to survive consumerism, whether we're going to survive the technological advances of the 21st century. I mean, after all, if you want an inspiring talk, just turn on Google. With a few keystrokes, you'll have a never-ending stream of content, really good content. I listen to it too, right? It's good stuff out there. But content is not connection. And relationships are not a commodity that can be added to a Wall Street portfolio. I truly believe that congregations like ours exist to counter the isolation of modern times. That in the willingness to show up, the willingness to notice others, the willingness to assume a shared human need to connect, in caring for each other, and in being courageous enough to take your conversations deeper, that the relationships you cultivate can reach out and change the world. Years ago, writer and rebel Kurt Vonnegut was asked, what should young people do with their lives today? His answer is relevant for us as well. He says many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is to create stable communities in which the terrible disease of loneliness can be cured. And may I add, to create communities of all ages that remember that kindred spirits are not as scarce as we all once thought. Today after service, I invite you to gather your courage and start some conversations with each other, to continue to notice each other, to connect, and to cultivate your relationships, one conversation at a time. Now to help you, you may have noticed, if you had to order a service, there's a little sticker in it. If you didn't get one of these, please get one at the back. And hopefully a few of you have pens. And I'm going to invite you, the sticker says, ask me about. So I'm going to invite you to write something on there that you would like to be in conversation with someone about, so that somebody can ask you about that. Jim threatened to say, ask me about my wife, and I said, don't you dare. So I'm going to write, ask me about my cat. All right, so as you can, as you're willing and able, I'm going to invite you to do that for our fellowship time. Maybe somebody crochets, write that. And for those of you that are online, feel free to write that in the chat, ask me about, so when you go off into fellowship time, you can have some conversation starters. As C.S. Lewis has said, fellowship is born at that moment when one person says to another, wait, you too? I thought I was the only one. So let's see if we can find something that we are not the only one. May you feel your collective humanity as you cultivate relationships today and in the future here at Emerson and beyond. And may you find that there are indeed no strangers among us. Blessed be everybody. We're going to move into our water communion time. Now, I couldn't not do water communion because it's a tradition that we do, but I didn't want to make a huge, big thing about it because a lot of you guys are at home and not here. But let's do it, and for those of us that are here, we will offer this to those of you at home. If you are at home and you want to gather a container of water, that would be great. If you came in and did not get your little container of water, could you raise your hand and one of our lovely hostesses will bring you a container of water? I actually didn't get one. This is a ritual, if you're unfamiliar with this, a ritual that's often done in the fall in Unitarian Universalist congregations. The ritual itself began in the 1980s as a symbol of our shared faith, and it really came out of the feminist movement inside of Unitarian Universalism. It was constructed by two women, Lucille Longview and Carolyn McDade. And it really is an opportunity for us to acknowledge our own individuality, and then by pouring that water together, acknowledging who we become together. And as you will notice, it goes without saying that when you pour your water in the bowl, you can never take your exact water back out again. May I have some water too? So we're going to begin when you have your water with a little blessing for the water. I believe strongly that our power of intention is real, and that just by sending loving kindness to others, that they can feel that. And thank you, Anne, by offering a prayer into the water, that can also manifest itself. So please feel free to hold your water in your hand. So first take a moment to acknowledge this water. The water you hold in your hand actually came from Little Noonday Creek here in our property. It was flowing. I tried to capture it at the place where it was really flowing down. So it was flowing water. Water that came from somewhere and was on its way somewhere else. So take a moment if you'd like to close your eyes to do this part. Feel free to do that. Those of you at home can just imagine yourself holding some water, perhaps getting some water from your own kitchen. Take a breath and connect first with this power of the element of water. What a powerful element in our lives. We cannot live without water. Our own bodies are 70% or more water. And the earth cannot live without water. Plants, animals, it's the connecting force among all of us. So first offer a prayer of thanksgiving in this representation of the waters of the earth in this small little jar. Say a silent prayer, or out loud if you would like. Thank you, waters of the world. And then into this particular water, I invite you to offer a prayer for yourself as part of this community, and a prayer for the community as a whole. Perhaps this is your first time here, and your prayer can just be a prayer of connection, a hope of how you hope to connect here. Perhaps you've been here for years and years and years, and your prayer is one of deepening. Take a moment and speak. It can be quietly, just in your mind. Speak your prayer. And in a moment, as we sing our closing hymn, I'm going to invite you to come up, and we'll give space between each other as we do, and open your jar and just offer it to our communal bowl as a way of symbolizing your blessings and your prayers for yourself and for the community coming together today.
The world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. The world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes, with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. The world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall.
for our children who are not with us in the room right now, for all of you at home, and for you, Bruce. Thank you. It's beautiful to see that water. You know, I love how water changes from ice to steam to water again. And so do we. We change in who we are together. We change in how we be together. I want to close with this quote, and I hope you got your card. These are cards for you to go in that little magnet for your fridge if you want them. There's more in the back if you didn't get one. Reverend Scott Taylor says, we must remember to go slow. It's the secret so rarely mentioned. Simply put, relationships are hard to build when we are running. So may you all go slow enough to build these relationships, for us to build this beautiful community, and us to be strangers no more. Blessed be.
Please join us. At the front entrance of our building for refreshments and fellowship right after this service. And for those of you online, you can just stay right where you are, and you'll be put into some breakout rooms to have some fellowship time. We sincerely hope you have been nourished in heart and mind by our worship today. Reverend Deborah, it was a great, great message. It reminds me of something that happened yesterday, if I can go off script for a moment. I was raking and blowing leaves out front with Nick Joke, and we had a huge pile of leaves. Nick said to me, Ed, when was the last time you jumped in a pile of leaves? I said that was a way, way long time ago. But it made me think that these innocent leaves in all different colors and sizes and shapes represent us. And how when you were a child and you were in that big stack of leaves, if a stranger came by, once they jumped in the stack of leaves, they were no longer a stranger. They were leaf hoppers.
Amen.
At 11:15 this morning, we've got activities for adults and for youth. The first one is going to be Meet the Minister and Discover You. That's in room 122 with none other than Reverend Deborah. A chance to meet our minister and to learn a brief history of Unitarian Universalism and to pose any questions. Also, we'll have service reflections right here in the sanctuary with yours truly, where we'll have a great time to jump in the leaves and get some discussion and tell some stories and just discuss how did today's theme touch you and what does it mean in your life. And we haven't forgotten you folks who are online, because James Petit will be having empathy exercises. It's an opportunity to develop your ability to empathize with others, particularly people you don't understand. And it's a chance for us for this heart-opening session where we can focus our attention on others of all kinds. And of course, at 11:15, versus in the past, we've been having them a little bit later, but we have our faith classes for the kids. And it's going to be at 11:15. Elementary explorers and the junior youth will meet out in the forest classroom. And our senior youth are going to be in room 218 and also online. Our chalice is extinguished this morning. Please join me in the final words as they are posted in the chat for you folks online. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
All right, please go now in peace and take peace wherever you go.